So now that we know how to find formulas for compounds from their names, how do we go the other way? If I'm given a formula, how do I name that compound so that somebody else could figure out what the formula is, so that we both know that what we're talking about? Now, a couple of reminders before we look at how this is done. Remember that polyatomic ions have special names, right? They come off this list right here. Okay, so when you see ions that have 2 capital letters, you're going to pull the words straight off this list. Okay. We also know that anions, remember those are negative ions, okay, that aren't polyatomic will end in IDE. Okay, so if you see just a phosphorus atom or just an oxygen atom or just a chlorine atom, we need to end those in phosphide or oxide or chloride. Okay, then cations, those are our positive ions, okay, are usually just the name of the metal. We're not going to fight with transition metals right now. We'll do that in the next lesson. Okay, so for right now, most of our cations are just a metal word. Okay, and then we need to know that the names that we're going to give these do not have any numbers in them. Only time you would see any kind of number in a name is if it's a Roman numeral, which again, we're not going to deal with in this lesson. We'll learn in the next one. Okay. The simple how do I name an ionic compound is name the 2 ions. That's it. All you have to do is name the ions that are used. You don't have to account for how many there are. You don't have to account for anything else other than give me the 2 names for the 2 ions that are used. Okay, so we'll start with this one right here, right? Because we've seen it before, it's somewhat familiar. Okay, so we look at these 2. What are the 2 ions that are being used? Well, this would have been a sodium, an Na+, and this would have been a Cl-, right? And you don't have to go all the way back here because we don't necessarily care. We just need to know what they were. So this Na, that's my cation, my positive one. Okay, so I just named the metal. That's sodium. Okay, and my Cl-, that's a nonmetal. It's not polyatomic, so I'm going to put an IDE at the end of the name. So this is chloride. Okay. Similar, if I look at this MgSO4, same thing. This Mg, that's the first thing is always the cation. So this Mg here is my cation. I name my metal. That's magnesium. This SO4, I can see 2 capital letters there. And since there's 2 capital letters, I know it has to come off of my list here. So I come and find my list, and I find the thing that looks like an SO4. That's right here. And I'm just going to write that word right there, that sulfate. Just like we did when we named the ions individually. Now all you have to do is look at the formula and name 2 ions, because there's 2 ions in this thing, right? Okay, same thing here. This Ca is a metal. We call it calcium. Nothing fancy. Okay, this NO3, I can see 2 capital letters. There's parentheses in it, which screams, look at me, I'm a polyatomic ion. Okay, so we come over here and we find our NO3. Okay, it has a negative, but remember that when we made this formula in the last lesson, that we crossed that down. So it disappeared when I wrote the formula. Okay, but all I care about right now is that that NO3 is a nitrate, calcium nitrate. Okay, and then we'll come back up here to this one. Okay, so we've got NH4. Well, that's a polyatomic ion. You have to watch out sometimes for those NH4s. That comes off our list right here, right? So that's ammonium. Okay, and then I've got this P, and since it doesn't have any other capital letters to go with it, it must be an element. And again, nonmetals, my anions, they always need to end in an IDE. So I would call that phosphide. And I would run out of room, make my I. And that is all there is to naming ionic compounds.